When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
Welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to be revisiting the character of Barbrey Dustin. I feel like I've talked about this character a number of times, and each time, I just feel like I have new thoughts and different things that I want to talk about with the character. And in today's video, I want to look at what is she really playing at? Whose side is she on? Is she really a Bolton loyalist? Is she really a Stark lover like Wyman Manderly? Is she somewhere in the middle? Who is Barbrey Dustin? And let's look at some of the events that happened during A Dance with Dragons and even her backstory and try to figure out who this character really is backing in The Winds of Winter and even A Dance with Dragons as a whole as well. So let's start off with a little bit of Barbrey Dustin's backstory. So Barbrey Dustin has this very conflicting backstory with the Starks. And it's very interesting because on one hand, she loved and it seemed like she had an affair with Brandon Stark. Her father was trying to marry her to Brandon Stark, and then even later to Ned Stark as well. None of those end up going well because of, well, Southern ambitions. Everything kind of boils down to that. For the North during the Robert Rebellion era, it was unprecedented for the North to get so involved in the South in terms of marriage alliances, all of that type of stuff. And so Barbrey Dustin has a grudge for Rickard Stark and also the Maester, but then later also with Ned, because Barbrey Dustin ends up losing her husband, and she loses her husband at the Tower of Joy, and Ned never brings back his bones. Ned buries him at the Tower of Joy along with everybody else that allegedly died there. So Barbrey Dustin holds this kind of grudge against Ned because, well, Ned brought his sister's bones back, but not the loyal men that died for him and his sister. It's not a great look for somebody like Barbrey Dustin, who had already been slighted by them once. Now she's slighted by them a second time. So that is some of the motivation right away, where why does Barbrey Dustin not like the Starks all that much? And that's what she tells Theon. And a lot of that comes down to this great quote that we see between Theon and Barbrey Dustin in the Crypts, where Barbrey Dustin's talking to Theon about wanting to be a Stark and how they actually have more in common than they might think. And it's a great moment. I love Theon's plotline mainly because Theon's a great character. He has a great supporting cast in his plotline, and Barbrey Dustin is one of those. So that's part of it. Now we also have to look at the other side of this backstory that connects Barbrey to the Boltons, which again is very conflicting. And on one hand, Barbrey Dustin loves certain Boltons and she hates certain Boltons. Same idea as the Starks. So Barbrey has a number of connections to the Boltons. So one of those being that her sister actually was the second wife of Roose Bolton and actually was the mother of Domeric Bolton. Now Domeric Bolton was very close to Barbrey Dustin, almost like a son to her. And Barbrey really liked him. And the problem with that is, allegedly, Ramsay Bolton killed Domeric Bolton, which I believe is the most likely outcome. So Barbrey Dustin holds a grudge over Ramsay for that. But then it also gets worse, because Barbrey Dustin is very much aware of what seems to have happened with Lady Hornwood and the awful treatment that she was given by Ramsay. It's even further expanded upon in A Dance with Dragons when Barbrey is not willing to basically house Ramsay because she hates him that much. It's also, in my opinion, another reason why she also takes an interest in Pity and Theon, but we'll get to the Theon connection a little bit later because I still want to build up the background. So, on one fell swoop, you have a connection with the Boltons and the Starks for Barbrey Dustin. She has a very good familiar relationship with both families. But in both cases, she has certain family members in those families that she loves, and certain ones she absolutely despises and hates. So who does Barbrey truly support? Well, it's a tough question, because when we get to the main story, when we finally see her in the final book that we've gotten so far, she very much seems to be a staunch Bolton ally. She's one of the first people to back Roose Bolton. She's even willing to basically put on the marriage between Ramsay and the fake Arya. She's willing to take control of that. It's a really big thing of showing that Barbrey is loyal to Roose. And that eventually doesn't actually happen because Stannis leaves the wall. Roose wants to get to Winterfell, kind of make it more official, right? Have this wedding with this Arya character at Winterfell in her home to make it seem more legit. But I want to point this out right away. Like I mentioned earlier, Barbrey doesn't want to even house Ramsay whatsoever. And there's another part of this that I think is fascinating. So Barbrey says that if she ever finds Ned's bones, she's going to make sure that they never reach Winterfell any of that stuff. And Barbery very makes it publicly known. She has a very public motivation as to why she goes with Roose and the Boltons, because she hates the Starks. I think it's very convenient, though, given the fact that we know she did love a Stark, and it's kind of weird that she would blame all of House Stark for things that Rickard and Ned did. And I think that's interesting because when we look at Barbery's actions, when we get to, for instance, the marriage between Ramsay and fake Arya, aka Jane Poole, it seems like Barbrey Dustin realizes this is not the real Arya. And again, it's not that hard to figure out, in my opinion. And a lot of the reasons that that marriage is working for Roose, or was going to, is because Roose held all the power. Nobody was going to question it. But Barbery is somebody that takes over, for instance, housing and or, preparing Jane Poole for the marriage. She takes a keen interest in that. And there's another thing that I find to be very interesting is Barbery Dustin wants to go to the crypts. Now, the surface value reason is, well, she wants to go down there to see Brandon Stark. And it really mirrors, in my opinion, actually when Robert and Ned go down to the crypts early on in A Game of Thrones in the first couple chapters. And I say this for a number of reasons, because it's kind of like this pretense to go down there, right, to see a loved one, somebody that you loved, in Barbery Dustin loving Brandon Stark. But then it kind of goes a different route. It's a lot about talking about Theon and his identity. It's also then talking about the crypts, but then finding these missing swords. There's a lot of attention drawn to it. And you got to also remember, Wyman Manderley has kind of just revealed that he understands that Rickon and Bran are alive, and he gives his whole mission to Davos, and he finds this story from Wex. So I believe personally what you could be seeing is that Barbery Dustin actually gets involved with the Grand Northern Conspiracy and is actually using her whole alias of hating the Starks as kind of a cover. Because you might be thinking, well, why then would Barbery Dustin not want to go with the Boltons if she seems so cocksure in backing them? Well, she doesn't necessarily. Like, publicly she does, but to even Theon, she shows that she's not really backing the Boltons outside of just kind of fearing Roose Bolton. Roose Bolton is somebody that is kind of a very evil, kind of fearful person. Everybody seems to just not want to mess with him type scenario. And we see that when she basically is like looking at Roose Bolton and how he's eyeing up everybody, and he knows that, they could be unloyal and things of that nature. Like, he's suspicious of Wyman Manderley, waiting until Wyman Manderley eats something for him to eat it, just so it's not poison. That shows how suspicious he is. And it's very interesting because Theon brings up how Barbery Dustin could be a huge threat to the Boltons. And Barbery Dustin is like, yeah, I could be. And that's what I think is really interesting, is that you have the motivation of Barbery Dustin hating somebody that is currently in the room. Because think about the situation. If Roose was to die at any point in the coming battle, well, Ramsay would be the person that would eventually take over House Bolton. And that's somebody that Barbery hates. So why would she back the Boltons when, as of right now, the options are between, one, Roose is going to give birth to a Frey child, or two, it's going to go to Ramsay Bolton. And remember, Barbery Dustin at the end of A Dance with Dragons also hates the Freys. She brings up this whole thing saying, Barrowman also died at the Twins. Everybody hates you here. It isn't just, the Manderleys. It's everyone. The North, remember, she has her own, like, Wyman Manderley speech, but it's even more, Wyman's is pretty hard to beat. It's my favorite chapter of Dance with Dragons, but hers is almost, like, even more badass because it's saying it straight up to the Freys, saying it right to their faces. So you have this connection where Barbery hates the Freys. She has reasons to not like the Boltons, and yet we're supposed to believe that she's backing Roose. At best, I think Barbery Dustin is playing the field. She's just playing with Roose's side until things start going bad, because she realizes having Roose in control of the North is not a good thing. Roose is not a, likable person, a good person to have as the ruler of the entire North, and she's probably going to realize, even if it's not immediately. Let's even say that Roose is able to beat Stannis. It's likely Roose is never going to be able to hold the North. The North eventually is going to just overturn him. And so for Barbery, I look at it like this. It isn't that, okay, that she then loves the Starks. Because she hates the Boltons, the Freys, that doesn't mean she loves the Starks. But I could see it as, it's a lesser of two evils, right? And if the Stark faction is gaining more power as every day goes by, whether that's with, maybe this Umber Manderley alliance, and you also have the Glovers being involved in this alliance. If Barbrey Dustin puts her power into that, plus with Stannis here, it's not looking good. And especially when you think about what just happened. So Roose Bolton sends out the Freys, the Manderleys. The Freys are likely going to lose their battle, and their forces are going to be decimated. Well, that's not good for Roose. A lot of Roose's main power is between his own forces with the Dreadfort men, and then also the Frey force. If the Frey force gets wiped off the earth, well, things are looking quite badly, because Barbrey Dustin within Winterfell is that tipping faction. She is the one that could decide the full outcome of what happens. So I think Barbrey Dustin, in my opinion, the conclusion I've come to upon reevaluating her character and where I am with the character is she's playing her own game in terms of what is the safer option, what's going to keep her safe, what's going to keep, her people safe, her family safe, and what is best in her own self-interest. I don't think it has anything to do with how Wyman Manderley is like, the Manderleys have a lot to owe the Starks, all that stuff, because they're tied histories and they have a deep loyalty to them. I don't think it's that at all. I think that it's Barbrey Dustin is very clever. I think she's very intelligent. I think she sees the way the war's going. And at first, it made a lot of sense to back Roose Bolton because he was the person in power. He was the person that you want to support. But as that power is waning, as the situation is growing worse and worse and worse for Roose, Barbrey Dustin has a perfect chance to switch sides, if she's not already done that, or at least is fielding both sides right now. So that's kind of where I've come to. Now, you might also be wondering, why would somebody involve Barbrey Dustin in the entire Grand Northern Conspiracy? And a lot of it just goes back to what I just said. Barbrey Dustin, albeit on face value, seeing has a lot of reasons to go with Roose, there's a lot of reasons that she wouldn't want to go with Roose, and that's quite clear as well. And I don't think Roose is like oblivious to this either. Like, Barbrey Dustin literally says, yeah, Roose tries to treat me nicely. He tries to keep me, well loved, all that kind of stuff to keep Barbrey Dustin on his side. And I think that's very true. I think that Roose is not stupid. Roose realizes the situation. So let me know what you guys think about Barbrey Dustin. I think I didn't really, go into predicting her character in Winds of Winter because I've done that in the past. But I wanted to just evaluate the character from what we've gotten in Dance with Dragons and what we're probably going to see in the Winds of Winter. She could have a very big role in the fall of Roose and Ramsay Bolton, which would, I think, be very satisfying given how Barbrey Dustin hates Ramsay so much. It would be awesome to see a combination of Barbrey Dustin, Wyman Manderley, and Theon, alongside of Stannis, of course, be able to take down the Boltons. That would be super cool, but we'll see what happens. And I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.